Hey there, fellow classic comic collectors. As always, I'm Scott Harris King, and today I'm really excited because I'm finally bringing you a video that I've been teasing for months and months, as I'm going to begin looking at my complete run of boy comics. As you guys know, I'm a huge fan of comics, but specifically I love to collect complete runs. I am a completist. I know in a lot of collecting areas it's sort of gone out of favor as people are just interested in getting the keys and whatever. But for me, I love to put together the complete runs. In some of my previous videos, I've shown off, the first 150 issues of my complete run of Avengers. I've got a complete run of the Bronze Age Wonder Woman from 177 to 329. I've done a couple videos for the first two parts of that. And I've got a bunch more that I'm going to show at some point. But of all of my complete runs, and I have a lot of them, probably the one I'm most proud of, if you could be, if you allow just a little bit of pride here, the one I'm most excited about, even more than Avengers, is Boy Comics. Boy Comics, for those who don't know it, is this Golden Age series by Lev Gleason, the publisher Lev Gleason, edited and mostly sort of written by Charles Biro. And it began in 1942 with issue 3, and it ran for 117 issues up until 1956. Yes, lasted post-code, and last issue was 119. And I'm a massive fan of Boy Comics. Such a big fan, in fact, that as some of you know, I actually have been self-publishing my own continuation of the series. Number 120, 121, and the Kickstarter for 122 is currently live right now as I'm recording this. I just love the series. I love the main character here, Crime Buster, aka Chuck Chandler. He was it appeared in all 117 issues. He was usually the cover, the cover draw, and only for a brief period did he get bumped off of the cover, but he was the main character through most of the series. I love the character, I love his series, and so about 12 years ago now, 2008 or so, I was first introduced to Boy Comics and Chuck Chandler. I just bought some random issues off of eBay. It was a lot cheaper then, and just fell in love with the series and decided to put the entire run together. And it took me quite a while. I actually just completed the run at the beginning of last year. So it took me a little over a decade to put the entire run together, but it's done now. And so I'm going to show it off here. So for this first video, I'll be covering issues numbers 3 to 30. And then next time, I'll be doing the second batch. Will probably be issues 31 to 60. And then I'll do another one for the rest of the series, 61 to 119. But for this time, I want to focus on those really early Golden Age War era books, issues 3 to 30. We'll start here with the big one. It is Boy Comics number 3. First issue, first appearance of Crime Buster. Again, this is 1942. Back in the day, it was very common to carry over the numbering because they had a certain number of mailing licenses with the government. And so it was cheaper to just continue those by carrying over the number than to apply to try and get a new one. So Boy Comics, I think the first 2 issues were published as a series called Captain Battle Jr. I don't have those. At some point, I'm going to try and pick those up. But here with issue 3, it changes titles to Boy Comics, introduces a whole new cast of characters. And Charles Biro, the idea that he had was basically to have a comic specifically aimed at boys by having all of the features in the book starring a boy as the hero, as the protagonist. So all of the main characters and all of the different features in here are all boys between, say, the ages of 8 and, say, 16. A couple of them, to me, seem to be getting up there in the teen years. The lead character, of course, is Crime Buster. A little atypical here because on the cover here, you can see he's wearing like a mask. He never actually wears that. At no point in any of his issues does he actually wear the mask. Crime Buster, just real quick, I'd like to describe him as what if Batman were middle class? because he has an origin very similar to Batman. Both of his parents are murdered in front of him, and he decides to fight crime as a result. Except he's, they're relatively well off. They're solidly middle class, but he doesn't have any of the resources that Batman has. He doesn't have the huge fortune. He can't go around the world being trained by all the greatest experts in the world or anything like that. So he just fights crime with what he has, which is basically he's a really athletic, smart, like 13-year-old when the series starts. And as the result, a lot of the times he actually kind of gets his butt kicked because he's just a kid with no special abilities or no gadgets or anything like that. He does have a sidekick, Squeaks the monkey here, who is just like Batman has Robin, obviously, since Crimebuster is a boy himself. It would be weird, I guess, if he had another boy as a sidekick, so they decided to shrink that down into a monkey. And the other features in here, some of which will be dropped soon, and some will actually go for a while. It's Bombshell, Son of War, and Bombshell is he's the son of Mars, and he's sent from Mars because they live on the planet Mars. Why not? He's sent by his father to intercede in World War II, and he ends up fighting on the side of the Allies, of course. Yankee Long Ago, strip done by the great Dick Briefer, who's best known for Frankenstein. Yankee Long Ago is the character who, when he falls asleep, he dreams that he's transported to different historical time periods and like famous historical adventures, and when he wakes up, he's never sure if he was actually there, if it was just a dream. Swoop Storm is kind of like Airboy, who Charles Byro had a big hand in developing, and he's like Airboy, but more of a boy. Same stick though. And then there's the Case Files. This is dropped really quick. Pepper Casey, which is a boy boxer, that gets dropped really quick. And then Young Robin Hood, which lasts for a while. There's actually another strip that comes in a few issues called Little Dynamite, which replaces one of these, which is sort of like this sort of like streetwise, sort of like wisecracking tough guy who's a kid. And that lasts for quite a while. So anyway, my copy here, it's really nice structurally. It's got a couple little pinholes up here in the top, and that's from at the time it would be displayed at on a newsstand with hanging from a wire, and they'd have a clamp. So there's a couple little holes or indentations, at least in the top, where a clamp was clamped on it. Other than that, it's actually just it's got a little bit of thing on the bottom of the spine. The main thing though is it's got quite a bit of tanning. So you can see it's got a bad dust shadow here, and it's got quite a bit of tanning. Structurally, I think it's probably an 8.5, mainly because of the thing down at the bottom. The tanning makes it hard to judge. Metropolis Comics had this at a 7. My wife actually got this for me for my birthday. Metropolis had this grade as a 7. I think that might be slightly ambitious. I would probably have it more in the 6 to 6.5 range, but obviously, as a huge fan of Crimebuster, I was so thrilled to get this. So thank you to my wonderful wife for getting this. So here we are. This is the last issue that I needed to complete the set. It's Boy Comics number 4, and one of the reasons it's so hard to get is because it has the Hitler cover, not just Hitler. It also has Mussolini and Tojo on it, and all the heroes from Boy Comics are smashing through the window. So this is really popular. It's also really hard to find a complete copy. This copy is actually technically incomplete. It's missing the centerfold. Doesn't affect any of the stories, but the centerfold was actually a board game called something like On to Berlin or Road to Berlin or something, and where you'd like roll your dice and you'd move your characters through Europe to try and capture Berlin. That is missing from a lot of copies because a lot of kids at the time tore that out to play with it. And so this is missing that centerfold, but I don't necessarily care about that too much. It allowed me to afford this copy and find a copy that other people didn't buy immediately, because this is a really hard one to get. Here's issue 5. It's a great war cover by Biro. The tank here, it's actually Japanese soldiers in the tank, and all the boy heroes are down here from the series. They're all tied up like Swoop Storm or whatever, young Robin Hood. They're about to get run over by the tank, but luckily Crime Buster's coming in to save them. When I got this, the seller had listed as a Schomburg. It's not, but I get it. It looks very Schomburg-esque. It's got this great with a black background and stuff. So I got this at a convention, probably 2012, 2013, and then I paid for it. It was about, I think, $100. But a great war cover. It also has this cool thing here that says monkey contest winners. So Squeaks the monkey, his sidekick, actually didn't have a name for the first 2 issues, and they held a contest to name Squeaks, and the winner was sent a live monkey. So you just imagine how excited the parents must have been to learn that their child had won a monkey when the mailman shows up and it's got a box with a live monkey in it. So, hey, 1942, things are a little bit different. I guess people were more worried about the war than they were worried about monkeys. But here it is, issue 5. I think a really underrated issue because the issues around it, 3, 4, 6, and 7, all get a bunch of hype. And 5 is the one that goes under the radar. And in some ways, I think 5 might have the coolest cover. So, a bit of a sleeper. So, I mentioned issue 6 is one of the big ones. Here's my copy of issue 6. It's a CGC 4.0, and it has this classic Ironjaw cover where Ironjaw is biting Crime Buster, and Squeaks, there's a haunted house in the background. It's just a great cover. Ironjaw is Crime Buster's arch enemy. He appears on a bunch of these covers, and there's a whole bunch of fans, superhero fans, whose main interest in boy comics is the Ironjaw appearances. I'm actually not a big fan of Ironjaw because I think the stories just got better once he was written out. They're a lot more detailed and nuanced and a lot more interesting character stuff. It's very one note for me with the Ironjaw stories because it's Chuck trying to get revenge on Ironjaw because Ironjaw killed his parents. And it's just kind of samey. So for me personally, I like the issues without Ironjaw more. He is a great villain. He's hyper violent, even for the Golden Age, because his shtick is that he bites people to death with his terrible iron jaws, and he does that a lot. He'll just bite someone's arm off and they bleed to death. That happens a lot in here. So, very excited with this. I bought this off of eBay. It was listed as a 3.0. It was raw. I sent it in to CGC myself, and it got the 4.0. So I was very excited to get that grade bump. But classic issue. Here's number 7. Again, this is an issue that has a lot of demand because it's got Hitler, Mussolini, and Tojo on the cover. The coloring makes it a little less in demand than issue 4 because they're in blue. There is highlighting the boy heroes more so. As promised, here's little Dynamite, who's now in the series. This is, I think, the last issue with Bombshell. And, so with another Axis Powers cover, it's in demand. But again, not as much as number 4. And it also doesn't have the thing that number 4 does, where it's hard to find a complete copy. My copy is a complete rag. You can see it's just brittle and all falling apart here. Same up here. I gotta be honest, I've never actually opened this bag. I have never actually even attempted to leaf through it. I know that's silly to spend, for me, I paid, I don't know, $40 or $50 for it because it's in such low grade. So I know that it's a little bit silly to buy that and just have it. But of course, these are all public domain, which means that you can read these digitally online for free. So what I did was I intentionally never read the story for number 7 until I bought it. And then once I had the physical copy of number 7, then I read it online. Hey, comic collectors, we all got our weird quirks, or else we wouldn't be doing this. So that's mine. This has a fantastic story in it. If I wasn't so worried about this literally turning to dust, I would open it and show you. It's got a great splash page with this executioner about to kill Crime Buster. And the story is so ridiculously over the top, particularly considering the series is explicitly designed to be marketed towards young boys. This is specifically marketed towards children. That's the whole purpose. And the lead story is unbelievably gruesome. All of these people being horribly murdered. There's a guy who impales two women on a spear, and then later in the issue he douses some of the gasoline and throws them into a furnace while they're still alive. He shoots a guy point blank in the face in one panel. It's just unbelievable. And it's like, hey, are you a 7-year-old boy? Try this. No, it's, you know, I'm not a fan of the Comics Code Authority, and obviously I'm not a fan of, like, you know, the anti American Committee and all that stuff, and all that 50s sort of censorship. However, I gotta say, some of these people were, these creators were exhibiting some poor judgment in some of the stories that they were marketing towards kids. I feel a little bit different about EC because those to me are books that are clearly meant for a more literate older audience, but stuff like this, like, oh, I don't know what they're thinking. So here's my copy number 8. It's very low grade. It's not as bad as the 7. I have read this one. The spine's completely split and chipping and falling apart is very common on these books. The price tag says $80. I did not pay $80 for this. This copy is probably like a 1.5. The spine is almost completely disintegrating. It's got an Iron Jaw cover. This is, again, like issue 5, this sort of falls in the cracks because it's the least desirable of any of the early issues, is issue 8. We're about to see a triumvirate of all-time classic covers, the type that get the classic cover designation, and the ones that are really in demand. So 8 is probably the least in demand. Again, they have this listed as a good minus. I think it's probably a poor / good, as I said. But this $80 price tag, I think I only paid half of that. I think I paid $40, sort of a placeholder, but I'm not really a condition person. So here's one of the big ones in the run. It's issue 9, and it's got a bunch of stuff going for it. It has this amazing cover where we got Iron Jaw dripping blood from his jaws because he just murdered someone. It's got the boy heroes with the Statue of Liberty, and the torch is like all this dramatic. It's like, and then down here we have he, she. I won't talk about this too much, but it's an infamous story where the villain is someone who is split down the middle, or where the right half of the body is female and the left half is male. And there's a lot of stuff in the story where the character will be seen from one angle, and the person will be like, "Look at that hot broad," and then the character will turn, and they'll be like, "Oh my god!" So it's an infamous story. It certainly feels a little out of touch for 2020, but with all of these elements going for it, this is one of the big issues in the run. It's probably the most famous in terms of the story content for the whole series. But between that and the cover, it's really in demand. I got this in 2009 or 2010 off of eBay. I paid $105 for it, and it's lower grade, spine split at the top. Again, the spine on a lot of these is the part that gets rough, and there's some real tanning and some splitting going on, and I think it's a little hard to tell here, but the staple might have some rust. So, I mean, my copy's low grade, but it presents really, really well for the grade. It looks beautiful. It's just on a technical level, so it would be worth a lot more now than what I paid for it. Speaking of a book that's low grade but presents really well, it is Boy Comics number 10. I have a restored 1.5, so obviously the restoration wasn't particularly effective, but this is a book where the restoration is a moderate amount of glue on spine of cover. That's the sort of thing, honestly, I don't care at all about. If it was a small amount of glue, it wouldn't have even gotten a restored label. Frankly, I don't know what the point is, that because a lot of the spine is actually missing. So I guess that was the point. They just glued the rest to it. But it's also missing big pieces of on the edges. I don't know if that doesn't look like chipping. It was probably silverfish or some sort of bug chew. But anyway, all-time classic Iron Jaw cover with the black and all the swastikas, the wartime stuff. Just a great cover. Really, really hard to find this. Very difficult to find. I traded for this copy, and I think I traded a Werewolf by Night 32 and an Amazing Spider-Man 122 for this. I might be wrong. It might... yeah, I don't remember for sure. But anyway, at the time I was happy with it. I'm happy with it now. Very hard to find in any condition. This copy looks great. Famous story inside where Iron Jaw like bites some people to death. So that's a classic. And then we have our third classic cover in a row. Another Iron Jaw special. It's Boy Comics number 11, where Iron Jaw started doing his Frankenstein impersonation. Byro in particular had this thing for women in red dresses. It was a theme with a lot of his covers on all of his books, Crime Does Not Pay and Daredevil and stuff. So, and it's got the dramatic lighting. It's just great. My copy is technically incomplete. It's weird. None of the stories are affected, but someone very carefully, like with a razor, cut out the text page. You know, at the time, in order to qualify for those certain mailing licenses, they had to have at least 2 pages of text to qualify as whatever the designation was with the government. And so they'd have these text stories. And in Boy Comics, the text stories are usually Daredevil stories, whereas over in Daredevil, a lot of times they were Crimebuster stories. And so someone must have been a Daredevil fan, I guess, because they cut out the Daredevil text story. None of the actual contents are otherwise affected. And other than that, it's actually pretty nice. It's got a couple small tears and chips along the spot, along the this edge over here, but it's tight. It's a little bit off register actually, which I haven't really noticed, but it's mainly just in the logo. Anyway, the point is, because it was missing the text page, I got a deal on it. It was $60, and that was a long time ago. Even with that missing, I think I got a pretty good deal on it. Here's issue 12, another great war cover. In this case, the Japanese are torturing an American soldier, and Crimebuster's busting in, guns blazing. The guy's clearly been worked over, right? He's giving him, but right now, at the moment he busts in, actually all they're doing is they're giving him a hot foot. Like, of all the things, the Japanese we couldn't break him, the beatings, the torture, none of that worked. How about an old-fashioned hot foot? So yeah. And here's a sort of thing you would not see on the cover today. The blurb says, first torture, this blurb here, first torture, then death. With 130 million lives at stake, can Crimebuster squelch this foul Jap treachery? Yeah, we wouldn't see that today. The answer is yes. My copy is horribly miscut. Look how it looks so crooked, because it is crooked. Look at the bottom. You can see how badly miscut. It's basically just the cover was put on crooked or something. I don't know. It's really bad. I've also got water damage up at the top. But structurally, it's fine, though. So here's issue 13. And my copy's a little bit wavy. It's got some issues on the spine. But it's a well-known cover among Golden Age fans. It's issue 13 because there's a group of soldiers here that looks like they're Nazis. A little hard to tell. But they have a group of civilians lined up against the wall, and they're about to execute them with a machine gun. So, and it's got a railway with some trucks driving away. So this is sort of a very early kind of like extermination concentration camp Nazi war crimes cover. So it's in a fair amount of demand for that reason. It also is only manufactured with one staple. A lot of these issues were, because there was a metal shortage here during the war. And so a lot of the books were manufactured with one staple. It's very common to find them with detached covers as a result. In this case, the cover is not quite detached, but it's really thinking about it. Another super low grade copy is issue 14, and you can see the prices on here. I had it at 25. They marked it down to 22. I did get this off of eBay. They listed it as a poor to fair, and that is maybe being generous actually, because I'm not sure there's a back cover. Yeah, there's no back cover. So there's the front cover where Ironjaw and Crimebuster are fighting while hanging from a helicopter, but the back cover is missing and it's just the interior. So, you know, I paid $25 including shipping for this, and so it's okay. These are the sort of things where I would like to upgrade them at some point, but do I want to spend $80, $100, $150 the price is now for a solid copy of this when I already have a copy? Not really, because there's other comics that I don't have. So, okay, issue 15, very important issue. We got another classic sort of cover. It's not like a classic cover like issues 9, 10, and 11, but it's a famous cover because we got another woman. I think she might be actually wearing a brown dress. I don't know. I'm colorblind. But this time she's in a cage, and this guy is putting live rats in there to eat her alive. And luckily Crimebuster's there to show up. This is a super villain. I use this term loosely, called the Rodent, who's like a half man, half rat. And what happens in this issue is the death of Ironjaw. Basically, Hitler and the people back in Nazi Germany feel like Ironjaw is sort of getting a little out of control. He's sort of pursuing his own agenda. And so they send their other agent, the Rodent, to kill Ironjaw. And they end up killing each other in a terrible fight to the death. So Death of Ironjaw, issue 15, and starting after this issue, it's going to take a couple issues, but the superhero elements with super villains like the Rodent and Ironjaw sort of disappears, and it becomes much more of a true crime sort of series. You know, Byro is also doing Crime Does Not Pay, which I mentioned earlier, and so Crimebuster became more of a detective. He's really the only person in costume or with a costume with an identity in going forward, and he's solving like these gritty street level crimes, and I think those issues get much better than these. Here's one of my favorite covers in the run. It's issue 16, where this woman wearing this great 40s outfit has been knocked out or something, and this suit of armor has come to life and is about to attack them. They've got the mad scientist here. He's rescuing her from this mad scientist. You can see there's some sort of like corpse on a table or something. It's so creepy, you know, haunted house sort of cover. I love this cover. 17, really well-known war cover, patriotic. We got the black cover. We've got, you know, the airplanes and the bombing raid, and of course, most importantly, Crimebuster with the enormous American flag running. My copy, again, low grade, a lot of sort of, I don't know if it's mold or what on the spine, but the sort of the darkening, it might be dirt, but I think this got wet, and so there's a rusty staple, and it's sort of gotten a little bad. Which is, I got this cheap, the bottom corner is missing. Cheap, it was $40 at the time. Again, I don't want to spend $100 plus to get a minor upgrade, so great cover. Here's the cover a lot of people love. It's okay for me, but I know a lot of Golden Age collectors love this one. The hyper violent car crash cover. I do really like, you know, the giant moon with the cityscape and everything. So really cool. It's just other people like this a little bit more than I do. Issue 19, one of my favorite stories in all of comics because it's so like absolutely bonkers. You can see it on the cover. This person here has just pushed this beggar. There's this guy who is a double amputee, and so he's on a cart with wheels. You can see he's got these things attached to his hands that he uses to push himself along. This guy's just shoved him in front of this oncoming train, right? That happens. That's actually how the story starts. This dude just murders this guy by shoving him in front of a train. But things get really crazy after that, because the reason they did it, he was this guy's caregiver. And the only reason he became the caregiver is because the guy's rich and he wanted to get the money. And so he just got tired of waiting around for his, and they like hate each other. But so finally he's like, I'm just going to kill this guy. And he does it, and he goes, and it turns out the guy did leave him his fortune, but with the stipulation that he could only get the money if he was missing both of his legs. So he goes to this like seedy like underground crime doctor and has the guy amputate his legs, right? And then he gets the money, and when he comes back, he doesn't get nearly as much money as he thought, because there were all these taxes and fees and all this stuff he had to pay. So he comes back to the doctor, and then he has to the doctor wants his money, and if he gives him, and then he's like, put my legs back on, I want you to reattach the legs. And the doctor's like, you didn't tell me that was part of the deal. There's no way to do that. I amputated your legs so high that they're just little stumps now. There's nothing to reattach them to. If I'd known that, I would have cut them off down by the knees. And so the guy's like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, you're stuck like this forever. Now give me my money. And so the guy uses the principle of leverage. Since he's down on the ground with no legs, he grabs the guy's ankles and he flips him out of a window and kills him. And then he wheels himself over to like this other guy, and who was like an accomplice, and they have a fight, and the guy just grabs him and picks him up and starts throwing him like a football all over the room, and he kills him by just chucking his legless body around the room. It's like, it's so berserk, and all of this happens before Crimebuster even shows up in the comic. It's only then that Crimebuster shows up to solve the case in the last 2 pages. Oof. Wow. I read that. It was one of the earlier ones that I read as part of my collecting experience, and it was just so insane. Insane in terms of making sense, but also just the fact that they would do it. That I was like, this series is for me. Issue 20, we got another woman in a red dress. This time there's the guy in a coffin, but it turns out he faked it, and he pops out. He's going to shoot them. But luckily, again, Crimebuster. And again, they seem to be in like a castle vault or something. So, cool cover. Here's the cover where Byro is sort of showing his limitations as an artist. We start to get more covers like this, the more and more of them as we go, where it's sort of like there's weird perspective, lots of little figures. It's a boxing cover, so there are some boxing collectors who are into this, but I don't think it's that great. 22, again, similar. It's like a diagram. It's like a side view where we got some divers on the bottom, and the guy up at the top is cutting their air supply, and Crimebuster swimming in to save them. I do love yellow covers, so my copy of this is actually a little bit nicer. Unlike the next one, where again I have a copy that's really beat up with a bunch of tears. I only paid about $25 for it, and this has talk about your niche covers. It's a golf cover where the guy's been murdered by having the flag for the hole be jammed through him like a spear. So it's a very rare hyper-violent golf murder cover. Here's issue 24, and in this, again, red dress. This time she's in some sort of psychiatric facility. She's in an asylum, and the orderly has put the straitjacket on and is tightening it up more and more with this, and luckily Crimebuster is there to save her. Spoiler alert, he does not show up in time to save her in the story. In the story, she is actually murdered by them tightening the straitjacket so much it crushes her internal organs. So thanks, Charles Byro, for that. Okay, here we are, issue 25. Now, I know a lot of my copies have been really low grade, but I actually have a few here that are pretty nice. This is one of them. This is a nice mid-grade copy. It's probably, it's got an impacted staple, but you know, it's probably in the 6.5 to 7 range anyway. It's really nice looking. Cool cover where we've got this guy dressed as the devil. He's a knife thrower, and there's, you know, they got all these cool stage props and stuff. I really like the coloring on this. And you know, he's got a shield. Here's Squeaks providing some comic relief as he usually does on the covers. He's got a rapier, so that's cool. Here's 26, a bit of a lower grade copy, but kind of cool historically. So this doesn't actually say on the cover, but it's from October of 1945. And here we have a reference to the atomic bomb, which of course was dropped in August of 1945. And it says, like the mighty burst of an atom, Boy Comics brings you bigger and better comics with 2 Crimebuster stories in a full 68-page magazine. Of course, the size of these comics is going to start reducing almost right away post-war. But, yeah, we've got the atomic bomb with a mushroom cloud over here with that blurb. And then we've got the actual cover, which is a guy wearing cement shoes being dropped into the river as Crimebuster tries to save him. Squeaks is swinging over on a rope. I don't think he's going to be able to... I don't think the monkey's going to be able to catch this guy with 100 pounds of cement on his feet and keep him out. This has a showdown at the docks, kind of like this, where the police are involved, and there's a scene where a policeman's in the water and the guy's up on top, and the policeman looks up, and there's a crack in between the planks, and the guy has his gun and he aims it down and he shoots the cop square right in the middle of the face in one of the panels here. That's the main thing I remember from that issue. 27, we get another subway cover. This time there's not a WMPT being shoved in front of the train. However, we do have a situation where the train conductor has been shot with a Tommy gun through the window, and so the train's out of control. And Crimebuster is coming up to try and stop the train from rampaging out of control. So that's a cool cover. 28 is actually kind of cool because there's it's a war profiteering cover. Now the war's over at this point, but there's all these boxes that say sugar, and then there's barrels that say butter, and there's a whole warehouse, and these guys are loading onto the truck, and Crimebuster's showing up to stop them. And this is cool. Now on the inside there's this story where we've got a big splash page. Some of the splash pages are like a lot more dramatic and exciting than some of these covers, because we're starting to get covers like the next one I'll show you in a second, where there's a lot of little figures that's very sort of cluttered and not as visually sort of designed with quite as much impact. They're covers you really have to look at in close detail, as opposed to I prefer bold designs with like a central figure and that sort of thing. But inside there's a splash page where there's a woman in a red dress who has been set on fire, and she's running around screaming with her head on fire. So again, Charles Biro knows just what your children need. And that's a horrifying, horrible story where this guy goes on a trip with his wife and he decides to murder her, and so he basically, I forget exactly how he arranges it, but he smashes a kerosene lamp into her head and she catches on fire, and then he makes it look like it's an accident, so she doesn't know he's involved. So she's like in pain, and he's like, let me get you to the hospital, and then he throws her in the car, and he just drives around in circles while she's like screaming in pain. She's like, we've been driving for an hour, when are we gonna get to the hospital? And he's like, we're almost there, and he just drives around until she dies. It's so bad, but that happens in a lot of these stories, that sort of thing. So here is a jailbreak cover. There's these crooks trying to get out of the penitentiary, and Crimebuster is fighting them in the yard. And finally, we'll wrap up here with issue 30. And issue 30, there's a guy who's been done dirty on the floor. Crime Buster comes in. He doesn't know that behind the door is the murderer waiting to strike. So it's a dramatic cover. The reason I wanted to end with this one for this first part is that this issue includes a reprint of Crime Buster's origin story from issue 3. So this is the last time we'll get that. Second time it's told, it's the last time we'll see this story. It has a couple minor edits to it. Yeah, so this sort of brings it full circle. The other thing is, at this point in the story, as you can tell from the things I was just talking about, some of those other tales, the stories are getting longer, they're getting more detailed, they're getting more crime-oriented. So the page count's going longer and longer. Crime Buster now, as we saw a couple issues earlier, has 2 features. So some of the backup features that have been going are ending. A lot of them are tailing away. I think at this point we're down to just a couple. Little Dynamite and Young Robin Hood, I think, are the last ones to hold on. We lose Yankee long ago, and some of the other ones get dropped earlier. Swoop Storm gets dropped around this time. And so the book becomes much more about Crime Buster and about these crime stories. We lose a lot of the adventure stories that we've been seeing in the backups. And to me, this is when the real golden age of the book starts. Which is really interesting because it's right after, post-war, end of 45 and into 1946 is when the superhero genre really started struggling across the board for all comics, and other genres started coming in. Lev Gleason, as a publisher, was really well positioned to take advantage of this because their biggest selling book was, Crime Does Not Pay, but they also had Daredevil and they had Boy Comics with Crime Buster, and so they started shifting those into these sort of slice of life, gritty tales from the mean streets of New York City. And the stories get so much better than when we're having these sort of like so-so action, superhero attempts, because it's just not Byro's thing. His thing is being able to write these really in-depth character studies of criminals and victims. And so I think this is right around, for me, around issue 27, 28, where we start to really see that shift. The stories are, you can tell. So 30, I think, is a great sort of cutting off point because we get the origin and it sort of recaps and brings us sort of full circle, but it's almost like a capstone to the beginning of the series. And now we're going to get into the real meat of the series, because for me, the issues from around 31 specifically up to around 45 or so are the best in the run. There's so many great stories. And then it's still good, but after that, I'll talk about this in the next video. It's still good. And then when issue 60, we get another sort of change of pace that changes things. So, but for now, I'll cover that in my next video. Next one I'll do will probably be issues 31 to 60. Or possibly 59, depending on how I decide to cut that off. But hope you enjoyed this look at the first part of my complete run of Boy Comics, a great underrated series. Again, I love it so much that I've been self-publishing my own continuation, which is currently on Kickstarter if you're interested in picking those up. So thanks very much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time with a brand new video, and at some point in the near future I'll get back to Boy Comics. I like to mix things up with different type of videos. So my next video won't be about Boy Comics, but it will I will get to these and the rest of the run sometime very soon. So thanks again, and I'll see you next time.